First question. You're ensconced as the DNC chair, former governor.
Yep.
Life's probably pretty good for you at that point. What makes you want to do this 100%?
I mean, I was enjoying it. I was enjoying the work I was doing with the president, and I was surprised at Senator Webb's decision. But I really wrestled with it over the course of the month, and I realized our nation has big challenges, and I like the arc that Virginia's been on. And again, not that we get everything right, but I just think our economy has been getting more dynamic. We've been getting more politically competitive, socially more inclusive, and I like that story. And I think there's some Virginia lessons that can help us solve big problems in Washington. And so when I realized that, I said, you know what, I don't want to be on the sidelines. I want to be out there battling with this Virginia story that I want to take to Washington if I get elected.
I asked this question of Mark Warner 3 years ago or so, and I'll ask it of you now.
Yeah.
Former governor.
Yeah.
Different job entirely than being a senator in terms of your approach. You're one of 100 if you get elected to the Senate. Mm-hmm. How do you make that transition, even just mentally right now in the next 17 months?
So I've done things. When I was on city council in Richmond, I was the mayor, but it was not a strong mayor system. So it was a committee of 9. I was managing director of a law firm. It was 130 people, and I was the managing director for a time, but also I was there working on the committee of partners. I've been in settings where you got to work with big groups, diverse groups. Richmond was very diverse, and I like it. Teamwork is the key to accomplishments. And even as governor, while you're an executive, there's nothing that you just say it shall be done and it's done. You got to have a team, and you got to work with people, both legislators, staffers, chambers of commerce, private citizens. So while I'm sure there will be some frustrations, probably at the pace. The Senate is a place that still rewards expertise. If you're passionate about a couple of things, you can do well. And so I want to go and master a couple of key issues that are important to Virginia, and I think I'll enjoy it.
You mentioned your record of being a bipartisan governor, having to reach out to the Republican House and Senate for a couple of years, and then the Republican House the last 2 years. Mark Warner had a similar record and is working in the Senate right now on similar issues. It seems like right now there's such a disconnect in D.C.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that in your talk here earlier. Mm-hmm. And getting things moving, particularly the jobs front, it seems like it's been so difficult because it's not just different visions for America, they're so diametrically opposed visions. Yeah. How can you reach across the aisle there and maybe work to get some movement going?
Again, I think you do it by how you present. And look, Virginia Democrats are results people. We're not like the overly partisan banging on ours all day long. That's just not the way we do things. And I think that attitude could be a helpful attitude in trying to deal with folks in the Senate. And it just takes patience. It takes patience and going day in, day out and trying to build the relationships to make things happen. I do think if you have a story that's a successful story, and the story I tell about Virginia is not just a Tim Kaine story. I'm proud I played a role in it, but look, hey, we've done some things together, and we can do some things together. Chris, I'm not naive enough to think that one person can go into the Senate and then change the dynamic. But the only way the dynamic will change is if individual people get elected and then go in with a commitment to do better. We've got to do that.
The needle is moving in the right direction, as you said, economically, the GDP, all the indicators point that way.
Yeah.
And yet still, there's people out of work. I mean, the unemployment numbers are uncomfortably high.
Sure.
What do we need to do now in terms of policies? What would you say, Tim Kaine? This is my idea for helping move the ball forward.
I think we got to make additional investments in education and infrastructure. We really do. So as I look at the deficit and our fiscal challenges, I say we got to make cuts, but be very careful about how we do it. We got to have more revenues. We shouldn't be giving tax breaks away to oil companies and others. But we got to then take some of that and put it into more infrastructure investments and educational investments too. So the president's expansion of the health care program, which didn't cost anything, it was just rerouting dollars that were going to banks so that more families could have loans. That's a really good strategy. And then infrastructure investments. What we did with the Recovery Act, wastewater treatment upgrades, broadband deployment, transportation projects, get jobs going now. Oh, well, thanks. I really appreciate it. I'm going to enjoy this. I don't think there's enough onion rings, though. I don't think that's enough. If we can continue to do that kind of infrastructure investment, that is something that creates jobs now, but also builds a higher platform for economic success later.
Looking at debt and deficit issues, maybe Republicans are pushing too much those issues in terms of, saying that that's the way to solve our economic issues. But still, at the same time, there are concerns about our future fiscal health. And looking at Social Security and some of those key big ticket areas that nobody seems to be willing to look at and say, you know what, we're going to cut here in the small piece of the pie where the budget can be managed. We're not going to touch those entitlements. We're not going to touch defense.
Yeah.
How can we get that debate going in a serious way?
Well, first on cuts, I will be the only candidate running for the U.S. Senate who's ever cut anything. I mean, I had to make cuts as governor. My opponent, George Allen, did not. And then he went into the Senate when we were in surplus, voted to increase the debt, voted to increase spending, include his own salary, and left with deficits. So one of my messages to Virginia voters is, if you want somebody to go in to make cuts, pick somebody who has shown the backbone to make cuts. And cuts aren't. And we can't take the entitlement programs off. We got to look at those too. So I gave an example here that's really important. Medicare costs one of the biggest cost drivers we have. For some reason, when that Medicare Part D plan was passed, that Senator Allen and others voted for, they've put it off limits that we would negotiate for prescription drug costs. The smallest business negotiates with prescription drug costs. We have massive purchasing power as a federal government. We ought to be able to get good deals on prescription drugs. If we do, that saves money, saves it for the government and saves it for our seniors. And so we ought to be looking in Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security on ways to hold down costs and the growth of these programs. But you don't do it by privatizing. You don't do it by shifting the costs onto the shoulders of seniors. I would always oppose that.
Last question, you got food here, so I won't keep you too much longer. It seems early in this campaign cycle. We're 17 months out roughly from November of 2012. What is that attributed to, do you think? You can pull in your experience as a DNC chair here too. Is it early, and why are you guys out here so soon?
I think, it might be early, but all races are getting like that. And look, the Senate margins are narrow. And Virginia's a battleground state, so people are paying attention to the state in a way they never have. The Senate margins are narrow, and it's an important time. So, I look at Washington and in Congress, and I feel like we got to have people who have backbone to make hard decisions. I've never been afraid to make a hard decision, and I think I know how to make them the right way, and that's what excites me about this race.
Well,
all right, thanks, Chris. Yeah, good to see you.